Her hand was already on the handle when the voice hit her back. "Don't open that door." It came sharp, too fast, like it had been waiting for her. Elena didn't turn. The wood felt warm under her palm, wrong for a place no one used. Behind her, boots scraped hard across the floor. "I said don't." The handle twisted anyway. The door gave with a slow breath, like it had been holding something in. Inside, the air was stale, heavy. A single chair sat in the middle, facing nothing. Iron chains hung from the wall, loose but not forgotten. On the floor, near the leg of the chair, a small shoe rested on its side, dust pressed into its seams. Elena stepped in before she knew she was moving. "You weren't told about this room." The man's voice was closer now, lower. She turned her head slightly. Sheriff Hale stood in the doorway behind her, one hand braced against the frame, blocking the light. His face didn't change, but his eyes stayed fixed on the shoe. "No one is," he added. Elena swallowed. "Why is there a child's shoe?" He didn't answer. The silence stretched long enough to feel like an answer. "Close it," he said finally. She didn't move. "Close the door, girl." Elena stepped further inside instead, her boots echoing softly on the wood. Something happened here. Hale's jaw tightened. Things happen everywhere. Not like this. She crouched slowly, careful, like the air might react if she moved too fast. The shoe was smaller up close, worn at the front like it had been dragged. She reached out but stopped just before touching it. Whose was it? Hale shifted his weight. "You ask too many questions for a maid. And you give too few answers for a sheriff." His eyes flicked to her, sharp now. "That's enough." Elena stood, brushing her hands against her apron even though she hadn't touched anything. The room pressed in tighter the longer she stayed. "You keep it locked," she said. "You stand in the hallway like you're guarding it." Hale stepped inside at last, slow, measured. "I keep this house in order." "This isn't order." Her voice didn't shake. "This is hiding." For a second, something passed across his face. Not anger. Not fear. Something older. He walked past her and reached for the door. Elena moved faster, her hand catching the edge before it could close. "Wait." He looked down at her hand, then back at her face. "You don't understand this place." "Then explain it." "I can't." "Won't." Same thing. The air in the room felt tighter now, like it noticed them arguing. Elena glanced at the walls. The wood was marked in places, faint lines, like something had scraped against it over and over. "Who was in here?" she asked. Hale didn't respond. "A child," she pushed. "Someone small enough to leave that behind?" His voice came quieter this time. "You're stepping into something that don't concern you." "It concerns me if I'm living under it." He exhaled slowly, like he was choosing each breath. "Close the door." No, the word surprised even her, but she didn't take it back. Hale stared at her, longer this time. "You'll wish you had." "Then tell me why." "Because some things don't stay buried when you dig at them." Elena held his gaze. This wasn't buried. She nodded toward the shoe. This was left. The room stayed still around them, but it didn't feel empty anymore. Hale reached for the door again, slower now, like he expected her to stop him. She didn't move this time, but her eyes stayed on him. The door creaked as he pulled it inward. The light narrowed, cutting across the chair, the chains, the shoe. "Last chance," he said. Elena looked past him, deeper into the dim space, like she was trying to see something just out of reach. "Something happened here," she repeated, softer now. Hale didn't answer. The door moved another inch. Then Elena's hand shot out again, gripping the edge hard enough to stop it. She pulled it back open, wider than before, the hinges groaning in protest. Hale's expression shifted, just enough to break the calm. Elena stepped forward into the room again, her voice low but certain. "I'm not closing it." Elena held the door open wider, her fingers tight on the wood as if letting go would make it snap shut and erase what she had seen. The room did not feel empty anymore. It felt awake. Sheriff Hale stepped closer behind her but did not enter fully. His voice dropped. "You shouldn't be in there." Elena didn't look back. "I'm already in." The air inside shifted, slow and heavy, like lungs drawing breath that didn't belong to any living thing. The chair stood still, but the shadows around it seemed to lean inward. Hale's boots creaked on the floorboards. "Step out, Elena." She finally turned her head slightly. "Why does it feel like it's breathing?" He paused too long before answering. "It's an old house. Wind moves through it." "That's not wind." Her voice was steady now, but her eyes stayed locked on the chair. The small shoe seemed darker than before, like it had absorbed the light. A soft sound came from the wall, not a voice yet, more like a slow inhale pressed through wood. Elena stepped forward without thinking. Hale reached out and grabbed her arm. "Stop." She looked down at his hand. "You feel that?" she asked. He didn't answer. The wall near the chair shifted with a faint sound, like something pressing from the other side. A whisper tried to form, breaking apart before it became words. Elena pulled her arm free. "Someone is here." Hale's jaw tightened. There was no one here. Then why does it feel like someone is still waiting? The room grew colder. Not sudden, but slow, like it was remembering how to be empty. Elena moved closer to the chair. Hale followed reluctantly, his presence heavier now. "This room stays locked for a reason," he said. "Because of a shoe," she replied without turning. "Because of what people think they hear," he snapped back. The word "here" lingered too long. As if it was dangerous to say aloud. The wall answered with a soft sound again, like breathing behind wood. Elena placed her hand near the chair but didn't touch it. "I hear it," she whispered. Hale stepped closer, voice low and sharp. "Don't listen to it." "I'm not listening," she said. "It's already talking." The air tightened. The chains on the wall gave a faint metallic tremor, though nothing touched them. Elena's breathing slowed as if matching something else in the room. Hale shook his head once. "Get out now." She finally turned fully to him. "What happened here?" His eyes flicked away for the first time. That small movement told her more than words. "Nothing you need to carry," he said. "Too late," she replied. The room exhaled. It was not loud, but it was clear. Like relief mixed with grief. Elena stepped back slightly, but not toward the door. Toward understanding. Hale moved fast then, crossing the space and pushing the door inward. The room dimmed as the light narrowed. "This ends here," he said. Elena caught the edge again, stopping it. Their hands met on the wood. "No," she said quietly. The chair creaked behind them, though no one moved it. Hale looked at her, something fractured in his calm now. "You don't open things in this house and expect them to stay open." Elena's grip tightened. "Then why does it want me to see it?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled the door harder, forcing the room into a thin strip of light. The breathing sound faded, but not completely. It lingered, like it had moved somewhere deeper inside the walls. Elena released the door slowly, her eyes still on the darkness shrinking inside. Hale locked it quickly, his hand steady but not calm. "Forget this," he said. Elena stepped back, never taking her eyes off the wood. "It already knows my name," she whispered. Neither of them spoke after that. The hallway outside the door felt too long, like it had stretched while they weren't looking. Hale kept his hand on the lock, but didn't turn it again. For a moment, there was a faint sound from inside the room, like a breath pressed against the wood. Elena noticed it before he did. "You heard that," she said. Hale didn't answer, but his jaw tightened. The sound came again, softer this time, almost patient. Then it stopped. Hale finally spoke, low and controlled. "Walk away from this door." Elena didn't move. The lock clicked once on its own, though no hand touched it. Hale froze. Elena whispered, it didn't want to stay closed. The hallway lights flickered once, and somewhere deep inside the ranch, something moved without sound or permission, watching them both. Elena did not sleep that night. She stayed on the small cot in the servant room, eyes open, listening to the house breathe around her. Every sound felt closer than it should be. Floorboards shifted somewhere above her. A pipe clicked once, then went still. Ruth stood in the doorway for a long time before speaking. You went upstairs. Elena didn't look at her. I did. Ruth stepped inside slowly, closing the door behind her. You opened it. Elena finally turned her head. I had to. Ruth's face tightened. No, you didn't. Silence filled the space between them. Then Elena sat up. What is that room? Ruth shook her head fast. Don't say it loud. Why? Ruth moved closer, lowering her voice. Because this house listens. Elena let out a short breath. So it's true. Ruth didn't answer. That was answer enough. Elena stood. Something happened here. A child's shoe. Chains. You can't pretend that's normal. Ruth's eyes dropped. Nothing here is normal. Who was she? Ruth flinched at the word she. Don't ask me that. Elena stepped closer. You know. Ruth shook her head again, faster. I know how to stay alive. The words hung sharp in the air. From somewhere in the hallway, a door creaked open on its own, slow and soft. Both women froze. Ruth whispered, Stop talking about it. Elena didn't move her eyes from the hallway. It's already in the house. Ruth grabbed her arm. Listen to me. You saw nothing. Elena pulled away. I saw a shoe. Ruth's voice broke slightly. Then forget it. Elena's expression hardened. You all say that. Close your eyes. Stay quiet. Forget. Ruth stepped back like she had been hit by the words. We survive here. That's all we do. Elena shook her head. Survive what? Ruth hesitated too long. Then softly, him. A silence dropped. Heavy. Final. Elena looked toward the ceiling as if she could see through it. Sheriff Hale. Ruth nodded once. Don't say his name like that. Elena turned back to her. Did he do it? Ruth's eyes filled with fear, not anger. Don't ask me that question. Elena stepped closer again. Then what happened to the girl? Ruth's breathing quickened. There was no girl. Elena stared at her. That's a lie. Ruth's voice cracked. That's safety. From the hallway, another sound came. A soft dragging noise, like something being moved across wood far away. Ruth froze completely. You hear that? Elena whispered. Ruth shook her head too fast. No, the sound came again, slower this time. Elena moved toward the door. Ruth grabbed her wrist hard. Don't go out there. Elena looked at her hand. Why? Ruth leaned in, voice almost gone. Because once you start seeing it, it starts seeing you back. Elena didn't pull away this time. It already saw me. Ruth let go slowly, like she had lost the fight before it began. Elena opened the door. The hallway was empty, but not still. It felt watched. Every shadow seemed slightly misplaced, like it had moved recently. Down the hall, a light flickered near the stairwell. Elena stepped out. Behind her, Ruth whispered sharply, Elena, stop. Elena kept walking. You can't unsee it, she said. So I'm not trying. Ruth followed reluctantly, whispering again, if Hale sees you asking questions. Elena cut her off. Then let him see. The stairwell creaked under her weight as she stepped onto it. From above, a door closed softly on its own. Ruth stopped at the bottom step. "This is how it starts," she whispered. Elena looked up. "Starts what?" Ruth didn't answer. Because somewhere above them, something shifted again. Slow. Patient. Like it had been waiting for someone brave enough to walk closer. Elena stood outside the locked door with the key in her hand, feeling its weight like it didn't belong to metal but to a decision she could not undo. The ranch was quiet in a way that didn't feel like rest. It felt like waiting. Downstairs, someone coughed once and stopped too quickly. She looked both ways in the hallway before inserting the key. It turned harder than it should have, like the lock resisted memory. When it finally clicked, the sound felt too loud. She pushed the door open slowly. The same room waited. Chair in the center. Chains still hanging. The small shoe still on the floor. But something was different now. The air felt tighter, like it recognized her. Elena stepped inside. "I came back," she whispered, not sure why she said it. The room didn't answer, but the silence pressed closer, like approval or warning. She closed the door behind her but didn't lock it. "Talk to me," she said softly. No response. Then she moved toward the wall where the chair faced. Her fingers traced the wood again, slower this time. "There's something here," she muttered. "I know there is." A faint sound came, almost like a scrape from inside the wall. Elena froze. "That's not wind," she said immediately, remembering Hale's words. "That's not wind." The name appeared before she expected it. Not written fresh, but carved deep enough to feel old. "Maria." Elena stepped back slightly. "Maria," she said out loud. The moment she spoke it, the air changed. A pressure dropped into the room, like something had been waiting to be acknowledged. The chains on the wall trembled once, barely visible but real enough to hear. Elena swallowed. "Who are you?" she asked the empty space. A whisper followed, thin and broken, not fully formed. She stiffened. "Say it again," she demanded. The whisper came back, closer this time. Not words yet, but intention. Something trying to push through the room itself. Elena pressed her palm flat against the wall. "I'm here," she said. "If you're here, I'm listening." The room responded with silence first, deeper than before. Then a sound behind it. Not from the room, but through it. Like breathing pressed from the other side of wood. Elena stepped closer, her forehead almost touching the wall now. "Maria," she said again, softer. This time, it answered. A voice, faint and uneven. "Don't leave." Elena pulled back instantly. "No," she whispered. "No, that's not," the voice came again, clearer. "Don't leave." Her breathing quickened. She looked at the chair, then the shoe, then the wall again. "You're trapped," she said slowly, testing the thought. The whisper shifted, like agreement. The chains moved slightly without touching anything. Elena shook her head. "Who did this?" she demanded. The room didn't answer directly. Instead, a memory pushed through in fragments. Not images she fully saw, but felt. A door closing too hard. A voice ordering silence. A girl crying but never fully heard. Elena stepped back, shaking now. "Hale," she whispered without meaning to. At the sound of his name, the whisper changed. It became sharper, heavier. Not anger exactly. Recognition. Elena pressed her hand to her mouth. "He said you were gone," she muttered. The wall responded again. "We are here." The words were not one voice anymore. Something layered beneath them, like others speaking at once. Elena's eyes filled, not with tears yet, but pressure. "How many?" she asked. No answer, just that same breathing behind the wood, deeper now. Like the room itself had become lungs. She stepped back slowly until her shoulder hit the door. "I didn't come to hurt you," she said. "I came to understand." The whisper softened slightly, like listening. Then it came again, closer than before. Help! Elena froze. I can't, she whispered instantly. I don't even know what this is. The voice repeated, not louder but more certain. Help! She shook her head, conflicted, trapped between fear and something else rising underneath it. Why me? She asked. The room didn't answer, but the shoe on the floor shifted slightly, just enough to notice. Elena stared at it. You're still here, she said quietly. The whisper responded, almost gentle now. Always. She stepped forward again despite herself. Maria, she said, voice steadying. What happened to you? The room did not answer with words this time. Instead, the air grew heavier, like truth pressing against her skin from all sides. Elena reached toward the wall again, but stopped just before touching it. Her hand trembled slightly. If I open this, she whispered, there's no going back. The whisper came one last time, softer than before but undeniable. Then don't leave us here. Elena closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, something in her expression had changed. Not calm. Not fear. Something between understanding and warning. I hear you, she said quietly. The room went still, like it had been waiting for those words all along. Elena didn't leave the room. She sat on the floor with her back against the wall, like distance would make the truth softer. The whisper was gone now, but it wasn't silence. It felt watched. The name Maria stayed carved in the wood like it had always been there waiting for her to notice. Outside, somewhere deep in the ranch, a door slammed once and no one reacted to it. She finally stood and pulled the shoe closer with her foot. This isn't just a mistake, she whispered to herself. This is a life. Her fingers hovered over the wood again. Who are you really? The wall didn't answer, but the air tightened in a familiar way, like it remembered her voice. She stepped back slowly. I'm not crazy, she said out loud, sharper this time. This is real. The next morning, she didn't wait for permission. She went straight to the back office where old records were kept. The door was unlocked, like it always assumed no one would dare enter. Sheriff Hale was not there. That alone felt intentional. Elena pulled open drawers, papers sliding under her hands, dust rising with each movement. There has to be something, she muttered. There's always something. Behind her, a voice came quietly. You shouldn't be here. She didn't turn immediately. You all keep saying that, she replied. The voice stepped closer. Ruth. Her face looked tired, like she had already lost this argument before it began. Elena, stop digging, she said. Elena held up a folder without looking at her. Missing reports don't write themselves. Ruth's eyes dropped immediately. That was enough. Elena noticed. You've seen this, she said. Ruth didn't answer. Elena opened the folder. A name stared back at her again. Maria Hale. Sheriff's daughter. The paper felt heavier than it should have been. No, Elena whispered. No, this isn't Ruth. Cut in quickly. Put it back. Elena looked up slowly. She was his daughter. Ruth shook her head fast. Don't say it like that. Elena's voice rose slightly. Then how do I say it? Ruth stepped closer, lowering her voice. You don't say it at all. Elena stared at her. You all protect him. Ruth's face tightened. We protect ourselves. Elena laughed once, short and bitter. By lying? Ruth flinched. By surviving. The word hung between them like a rule that couldn't be broken. Elena closed the folder slowly but didn't let it go. She went missing from here, she said. Ruth didn't deny it this time. That silence changed everything. Elena leaned on the desk, breathing harder now. Where is she? She asked. Ruth hesitated too long again. Gone. Elena's eyes narrowed. Gone isn't an answer. Ruth stepped back slightly. It's the only one we have. Elena looked down at the folder again. Sheriff's daughter, she repeated. And you all still call him Law. Ruth's voice cracked slightly. He kept things from spreading. Elena looked up sharply. Spreading what? Ruth froze. That hesitation told more than words. Elena stepped closer. Say it. Ruth shook her head. You don't want to know. Elena's voice dropped. I already know enough to never be the same. A heavy silence followed. Then Ruth finally spoke, barely audible. She changed before she disappeared. Elena frowned. Changed how? Ruth swallowed. She started hearing things. Elena's breath caught slightly. In the house? Ruth nodded once. In the walls. That word hit harder than anything else. Elena stepped back slowly. So she wasn't taken, she said quietly. She was, here. Ruth didn't answer directly. People tried to help her, she said instead. Elena looked at her. And? Ruth's eyes filled with something between fear and memory. They stopped trying. Elena's grip tightened on the folder. Sheriff Hale locked her away, she said. Ruth shook her head immediately. No, Elena's voice sharpened. Then what? Ruth hesitated. He contained it. Elena stared at her. Contained his daughter? Ruth didn't respond. That silence was enough confirmation. Elena stepped back, shaking her head slightly. No father contains his child, she said. Ruth whispered, not when the child becomes something else. That word hung in the air too long. Something else. Elena's mind returned to the room, to the whisper, to the breathing behind Wood. She looked at Ruth again. You believe she's dead? Ruth didn't answer. Elena nodded slowly. But you're not sure. Ruth finally broke eye contact. No one is sure of anything here. Elena exhaled sharply. Except silence, she said. Ruth looked at her again. Silence is what keeps us alive. Elena dropped the folder onto the desk. Then maybe I don't want to be alive like this, she said. Ruth's face tightened with warning. Careful what you say. Elena stepped closer. Or what? Ruth didn't answer, but her eyes shifted toward the hallway. That small movement said enough. Footsteps approached outside. Slow. Controlled. Ruth immediately stepped back as if nothing had happened. The door opened. Sheriff Hale stood there, looking between them without expression. Everything all right? He asked calmly. The question didn't match the room. Elena held his gaze. No, she said simply. Hale's eyes flicked to the folder on the desk. Then back to her. You've been reading, he said. Elena didn't blink. I've been learning. A pause. Ruth moved toward the corner quietly. Hale stepped inside fully now. Some things aren't meant to be learned, he said. Elena's voice stayed steady. Then why are they written down? That question landed heavier than expected. Hale didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at her like she had shifted into something unfamiliar. Finally, he spoke. You don't understand what you're touching. Elena took one step forward. Then make me understand. The room went quiet again, but this time it wasn't empty silence. It was tension waiting to break. Elena stood too close to Sheriff Hale for it to feel safe, but she didn't move back. The folder still lay open on the desk between them like evidence that had finally decided to breathe. Hale didn't look at it. He looked at her. You shouldn't have gone through that, he said quietly. Elena didn't blink. Then you shouldn't have written it down. A long pause followed. Ruth stayed near the corner, silent, like she wanted the wall to swallow her. Hale finally reached forward and closed the folder slowly. That name doesn't belong in your mouth, he said. Elena's voice was steady. Maria. Ruth flinched. Hale's jaw tightened. Enough. Elena stepped closer. She was your daughter, she said again, slower this time, like forcing him to hear it correctly. Hale didn't deny it. That silence was heavier than words. What did you do to her? She asked. His eyes darkened slightly. I protected this ranch. Elena shook her head once. From your own child? Ruth whispered, stop. Nobody listened. Hale finally turned away from the desk. You think you understand what you saw in that room, he said. Elena followed him with her eyes. I know what I heard. Hale's voice dropped lower. Then you heard wrong. Elena stepped forward. No. I heard her. That stopped him for a moment. Just a moment. Then he moved past the desk toward the hallway. Come with me, he said. Elena hesitated only briefly. Ruth shook her head slightly, warning without words. Elena followed anyway. The hallway felt different behind him. Colder. Not from air, but expectation. Hale walked past the stairs and toward a door Elena had never seen opened. It was lower, almost hidden, painted the same color as the wall like it wanted to disappear. He stopped there. You wanted truth, he said. This is what's underneath it. Elena frowned. Underneath what? Hale didn't answer. He opened the door. The stairs downward were narrow, old wood groaning softly under weight. The air changed immediately. It smelled like damp earth and something older, like metal left in water too long. Elena followed behind him slowly. This isn't part of the house, she said. Hale's voice came from ahead. Everything is part of it. The stairs ended in a low underground space. Not a cellar in the usual sense. Too wide. Too quiet. In the center of the room was an old stone well, covered halfway with a wooden frame that looked recently repaired. Elena stopped when she saw it. That wasn't in the records, she said. Hale didn't respond. She stepped closer slowly. Why is there a well under your house? She asked. Hale stood near the edge, not looking down. It was here before the house, he said. Elena looked at him. That's not an answer. He finally turned his head slightly. It doesn't need one. A faint sound came from the well. Not water. Something deeper. Like pressure moving through stone. Elena froze. Do you hear that? She asked. Hale's face tightened slightly. Don't listen. The words were familiar now. Too familiar. Elena stepped closer anyway. Maria, she called softly. The sound from the well shifted. Not louder, but aware. Like something had recognized her voice. Hale moved quickly toward her. Don't say her name down here, he snapped. Elena didn't move. Why? She asked. Because she hears it, he said sharply. That made her stop. She's down there? Elena asked. Hale didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, she never left this place. Elena stared into the darkness of the well. You locked her in there, she said quietly. Hale's voice tightened. I contained what she became. Elena turned toward him slowly. You keep saying that, she said. What did she become? Hale's expression shifted for the first time. Not anger. Not control. Something closer to fear. You don't want that answer, he said. The well made a sound again. Softer this time. Almost like breath rising. Elena looked down again. She's alive, she whispered. Hale stepped closer. No, he said immediately. Not alive like you think. Elena's voice rose slightly. Then what? Hale paused. She hears everything in this place now. Everything that was done here. Everything that was buried. Elena looked back at him. So she's aware. Hale nodded once, slowly. And it never stops. A cold silence filled the room. The kind that didn't belong underground. Elena stepped back slightly. And the shoe, she said. In the locked room. That's hers too. Hale didn't deny it this time either. That was answer enough. Elena's breathing changed. So she wasn't taken, she said slowly. She was used. Hale's voice dropped. She was changed. Elena shook her head slightly. By what? For a moment, Hale didn't respond. Then he said quietly, by what this place does to people who hear too much. The well gave another soft sound, almost like agreement. Elena stepped closer again, despite herself. Maria, she said softly. The moment she spoke it, the air shifted. Hale grabbed her arm immediately. Stop, he said firmly. You don't call it like that. Elena looked at his hand. It answers, she said. Hale's grip tightened. It listens. Elena slowly looked back into the well. The darkness didn't feel empty anymore. It felt aware. Waiting. Remembering. And then, very faintly, something responded. Not a voice fully formed. Just enough to be understood. Don't leave. Elena froze. Hale's grip loosened slightly, like even he heard it this time. Elena whispered, almost without meaning to, Maria. The well answered again, softer but clearer. Still here. Hale stepped back like the ground had shifted under him. Elena didn't move. Her eyes stayed fixed on the darkness below. Something in her expression changed then. Not fear. Not shock. Recognition. She's not trapped, Elena said quietly. Hale shook his head immediately. You don't understand. Elena cut him off without raising her voice. No, she said. I think I finally do. Elena didn't step away from the well. The word still hung in the air like it had weight, like it could fall back down if she stopped holding it. She's still here, she repeated, softer this time. Sheriff Hale moved between her and the edge of the stone opening. Enough, he said sharply. Elena didn't look at him. You can't shut her up anymore. Hale's jaw tightened. You're talking about something you don't understand. Elena finally looked at him. Then explain it. A long pause followed. The kind that wasn't empty, just unwilling. Hale exhaled slowly. Maria heard things in this place, he said. Things no one else heard. Elena stepped closer again, but not to the well this time. To him. Like what? He hesitated. That hesitation was new. Voices, he said finally. Elena nodded slightly. I heard her. Hale shook his head once. Not like that. Elena's voice stayed calm. Yes. Like that. The silence between them grew heavier. From somewhere above, the ranch creaked. A normal sound, but it didn't feel normal anymore. Everything felt connected now. Hale glanced upward briefly, then back at her. This house holds memory, he said. That's all it is. Elena tilted her head slightly. Memory doesn't talk back. The well below them made a soft sound again. Not loud. Just enough to interrupt. Elena turned toward it. It just did. Hale stepped forward quickly. Don't engage with it. Elena's voice stayed steady. It's already engaged with me. That stopped him again. A longer silence followed this time. Hale's shoulders looked heavier than before, like something inside him was starting to loosen. You shouldn't be able to hear it, he said quietly. Elena answered without hesitation. But I do. The air in the underground room shifted slightly. Not colder, just more aware. Like something unseen had adjusted its attention. Elena stepped closer to the well again despite Hale's presence. "Maria," she said softly. Hale grabbed her arm again, but weaker this time. "Stop saying her name down here," he warned. Elena didn't pull away. "Why?" she asked. "Because it responds?" The well answered before he could. A faint, broken sound. Not quite speech, but close enough to make both of them still. Hale's grip loosened slightly. Elena whispered, "She knows I'm here." Hale finally let go. Not because he agreed. Because he didn't know what else to do. "This isn't her anymore," he said, voice lower now. Elena turned to him. "Then what is it?" He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was quieter than before. "It's what remains when someone hears too much for too long." Elena studied his face. "And you left her here." Hale's expression tightened again. "I contained it," he repeated. Elena shook her head slightly. "You keep using that word like it makes it better." Hale stepped back. "It made it safe." The word safe sounded wrong in that room. Elena looked back into the well. "Safe for who?" she asked. No answer came from him. Only silence. Then the voice came again. Not from the well this time. From everywhere at once. "Don't leave." Elena froze. Her breathing slowed instinctively. "Maria," she said again, but softer. The response came instantly. "Still here." Hale stepped back further now. Real fear showing through his control. "You need to stop this," he said. Elena didn't turn. "It's already happening," she replied. The well began to make sound again, but different now. Layered. Like more than one voice speaking through the same place. Elena closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her expression had changed. Something inside her had settled instead of breaking. "She's not trapped," Elena said again, clearer this time. Hale shook his head fast. "She is contained." Elena cut him off. "No," she said firmly. "She's aware." She stepped closer to the well. "And she's not alone." That made Hale freeze completely. "What did you say?" he asked. Elena looked at him now. "You heard me." The silence that followed was different. It didn't feel like absence anymore. It felt like attention focusing. The well gave another sound. Longer this time. And inside it, something shifted that made even Hale step back instinctively. Elena didn't move. Then she whispered, almost gently, "How many?" The response wasn't a number. It wasn't a word either. It was pressure. Memory. Layers of voices that were not separate anymore. Elena exhaled slowly. "They're all here," she said. Hale's voice broke slightly. "No," he said. "Only her." Elena finally turned to him fully. "You were wrong," she said quietly. "It's not just her." A long pause followed. The kind that changes everything without needing permission. From the well, a final sound rose. Clearer than before. Not loud, but certain. "We remember." Hale stepped back until he hit the stone wall behind him. Elena stayed where she was, facing the darkness below. Her voice came softly, but without fear now. "Then I'm listening." Elena stood above the well listening to the voices that no longer felt distant or hidden. Sheriff Hale remained behind her, but his presence felt smaller now, like something losing authority with every breath. Elena said quietly, "They are not trapped." Hale shook his head. "No, you don't understand what this is." Elena turned slowly. "Then what is it?" Hale hesitated a moment too long, then spoke. "It is containment of memory of infection." Elena laughed. Softly. "No, that's what you call guilt." Hale stepped forward, anger returning. "This is not guilt, this is control." Elena pointed toward the well. "Control doesn't speak back, it doesn't remember." Hale flinched slightly at the sound of another voice rising from below. Elena closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. I heard her before you brought me here. Hale stiffened. No you didn't. Elena stepped closer. Yes I did, and she is not alone anymore. Hale voice sharpened. Stop saying that. Elena looked at him calmly. Why? Because it's true. He didn't answer. Elena turned back toward the well again, and something inside her settled like a decision had already been made. Hale moved closer to her, voice lower. Now if you open this place you don't understand what happens next. Elena didn't look away. I already understand enough. Hale shook his head. No you understand pieces, not the whole. Elena finally turned to him. Then tell me the whole. Hale hesitated again, longer this time, then spoke. Maria wasn't just hearing things, she started speaking things she shouldn't have known. Elena frowned. Like what? Hale swallowed. Like names, events, things buried in this land. Elena stepped forward. That's impossible. Hale shook his head. It wasn't. She changed after that. Stopped sleeping, stopped eating, started listening. Elena whispered. And you locked her down there? Hale voice cracked. We contained her. Elena snapped. No you buried her. Hale flinched at the words from below the well. A layered sound rose again. Elena stepped toward it and said softly, Maria, are you still there? Hale shouted, don't do that. Elena ignored him. The response came immediate. Still here. Elena exhaled slowly. I told you. Hale, she is here. Hale looked shaken. Now no one survives that. Elena turned to him. Neither did she just changed. Elena stepped away from the well slowly, her expression different now. Hale noticed it immediately. What are you thinking? She didn't answer right away. Instead she said quietly, this place doesn't heal, it holds. Hale narrowed his eyes. What are you saying? Elena looked up at him. Burn it. Hale froze. What? Elena repeated. Burn the house. Hale stepped back slightly. Are you insane? Elena voice stayed calm. No I am finally clear. Hale shook his head. You will kill everyone. Elena pointed upward. Everyone is already trapped. Hale said nothing. From above a faint scream of wood shifting echoed. Elena continued, they stay quiet, they disappear. Hale voice hardened. You don't decide that. Elena stepped closer. I already did. From below the well the voices rose again, louder, layered. Elena closed her eyes and said softly, not trapped, remembered. Hale looked at her like she had crossed something unseen. Elena opened her eyes again and said, we end this here. Elena climbed the stairs first, Hale behind her shouting, you don't know what you're doing. Elena didn't stop. Ruth was waiting at the top of the stairs, her face pale. What did you do? Elena looked at her. Leave. Ruth stepped back slowly. No, this is wrong. Elena walked past her into the hallway. Smoke wasn't there yet, but it felt close, like a promise. Hale grabbed her arm again, harder this time. Stop, Elena. She finally turned to him and said softly, you already did. Stop her. He froze. Elena pulled away and walked toward the main hall. Ruth whispered, you will destroy everything. Elena replied, everything is already destroyed. She struck the lantern on the wall. It fell. Flame caught slow at first, then fast. Hale shouted no. Elena stood still, watching the fire rise from the wood like it had been waiting. Ruth cried out but didn't move. Elena whispered into the heat, listen to them now. The ranch answered with a distant echo of voices, and Elena finally said softly, you don't own them anymore. Hale stood behind her, broken as the house began to burn. The flames reflected in Elena's eyes. As she walked out into the cold air, Hale dropped to his knees behind her, Ruth covering her mouth as the structure groaned. Elena didn't look back once, but she heard it, the voices no longer trapped, rising like wind, finally free. And in that moment she whispered quietly, it's done, and they remember everything now, finally free, completely released. Elena did not stop walking when the ranch began to scream behind her in collapsing wood and rising fire, because she already knew it was not just a building burning but something older finally breaking free. Behind her, Sheriff Hale stood near the opening of the broken structure, shouting her name once then again, but his voice was swallowed by the crackling walls and the deep sound coming from beneath the house where the well had begun to vibrate like it was remembering every voice it ever held. Ruth stood far back near the road, covering her mouth as if she could hold the past from escaping, but the wind carried something else now, not smoke, not ash, but whispers layered together like a crowd finally allowed to speak at once. Elena stopped at the edge of the field and finally turned back, not because she was afraid but because she felt them, the voices she had heard in the room and the walls and the ground, all rising now without restraint. Hale stumbled forward through smoke, coughing. Elena, stop this, you don't understand what you are releasing, he shouted, but she only looked at him once and answered quietly, I understand more than you ever allowed yourself to. From inside the burning structure the voices grew louder, no longer trapped in walls or well but spilling into the open air like water breaking through stone, and every worker who had stayed behind began to hear them too, collapsing into silence or running without direction. Elena walked back toward the collapsing ranch slowly, not as someone returning but as someone finishing what had been left unfinished, her voice low but steady, saying let them out, again and again, until the words felt less like command and more like release. The ground near the well shook slightly as if something beneath it had finally shifted after years of pressure, and Hale dropped to his knees again, whispering, Maria, I tried, but the wind swallowed his words before they could reach anything human. Elena stood at the center of it all, smoke, fire, voices, wind, and looked up at the sky as if for the first time she was not inside a ranch but inside something breaking open after being locked too long. The last sound came not from fire or wood but from everywhere at once, a collective breath finally released, and Elena closed her eyes, hearing Maria clearly for the first time, not as a warning but as a farewell. She did not speak after that, she did not need to, the voices were already gone from her, not erased but freed, and the ranch behind her continued to collapse until nothing remained that could hold them anymore. Hale remained on the ground staring into the fire as if trying to understand a language he had spent his life refusing to learn, while Ruth stood behind him silent and shaking, knowing nothing would ever be the same again. Elena finally turned away from the ranch completely and began walking down the empty road where no voices followed her anymore, not because they were gone in fear but because they had finally been heard. Each step she took felt lighter, not because the world had changed but because something inside her had stopped carrying what it was never meant to hold. Behind her the last piece of the ranch structure finally gave way and the sound of collapsing wood faded into something almost like silence, but it carried weight like memory releasing its grip. Elena whispered once more without turning back, "Let them out," and this time there was no answer because there did not need to be one anymore. The wind moved through the field softly now, no longer carrying voices, just air, just space, just the absence of something that had finally been allowed to leave. And Elena did not look back again, because for the first time looking back meant nothing to her, only forward, only distance, only freedom that had come at a cost no one there would ever forget. Far behind her the burning ranch finally fell into silence, not because it was calm but because everything it had been holding inside it had finally been released, and Sheriff Hale remained in the ruins staring at what he could not control anymore, while Ruth walked away into the dark, knowing the story of that place would never stay buried again, and that even silence in that land would never again mean peace. Only memory finally awakened, nothing could ever fully contain it again ever after. Elena walked without stopping even when the smoke behind her finally faded into nothing but memory and the road ahead looked empty, like it had been waiting for someone who no longer needed permission to exist. Her hands were still shaking slightly, but not from fear, more from the strange quiet that followed after something inside a place finally breaks and cannot be put back together. Behind her the ranch was gone, or close enough to gone that it no longer mattered what shape it had once taken, only the absence of it remained like a wound in the land that would never fully close. Sheriff Hale stood far back in the ruins, still watching the space where the house had been, as if waiting for it to deny what had happened, but it did not move, it did not speak, it simply ended. Ruth was nowhere visible now, swallowed by distance or choice or both, and the road felt longer than it had ever felt before because it was no longer shared by anything that still belonged to that place. Elena slowed only once when she reached a broken fence line where the land opened into wide silence. She looked back briefly, not at the fire or the remains, but at the idea of what had been contained there for so long. Her voice came out low, almost uncertain, not because she doubted herself but because she was no longer answering to anything that used to define her. Elena said softly, "I was never just that," and the words felt strange in the open air, like they were learning how to exist outside the ranch. She kept walking again, and the ground beneath her felt different, lighter, not because it had changed but because she was no longer carrying what had been buried inside it for so long. Inside the ruined Sheriff Hale finally stood up slowly, his face covered in ash and something closer to realization than defeat. He whispered her name once, but this time it sounded like a question he could no longer force an answer to. The well was silent now, no longer pulling sound or memory upward, only empty stone, and he understood at last that what he had called containment was never control, it was delay. Ruth, far down the road, turned once, looked at the place, and kept walking because there was nothing left to save and nothing left to protect from truth anymore. Elena reached the far edge of the land where the road split into nothing familiar and stopped for the first time, not because she was lost but because she was finally free to decide she was no longer being followed. She exhaled slowly and for a moment closed her eyes. The voices were gone, not because they had disappeared but because they had been released, and what remained inside her was not their weight but their witness. She spoke once more, not to anyone behind her but to the space itself. Elena said quietly, "I hear you now," and this time there was no reply, only wind moving forward instead of backward.